Ever feel like local government is this like giant mysterious machine,
Yeah.
churning away in the background of our lives? We see the headlines and hear the debates. But what's really going on in those city council meetings?
Yeah.
You're about to find out.
Okay.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into the heart of Austin's local government, using two sets of meeting minutes from February 2024. Hundreds of pages of bureaucratic jargon,
Oh, wow.
boiled down to the good stuff just for you.
And let me tell you, there's more drama and intrigue in these minutes than you might expect.
Oh, I believe it. But before we get to the juicy bits, let's set the stage. For those who haven't had the pleasure of attending a city council meeting or deciphering their minutes,
Right.
what exactly are these documents, and why should we care?
Think of council meeting minutes as the official diary of your city government. They tell the story of what happened during each meeting. Decisions made, votes cast, topics debated. They're crucial for transparency, holding your elected officials accountable for the choices they make on your behalf.
Okay, so it's like a transcript, but instead of a play-by-play of every cough and sneeze,
Right.
it's more like the director's cut, highlighting the key plot points and decisions that shape our city.
Exactly. And they're public record, meaning anyone can access them and see how the sausage of local government gets made. Now, as you might imagine, these minutes can be a bit dry.
You tell an M. No. But that's where debut come in.
Yeah.
We've sifted through the legalese and bureaucratic jargon to bring you the most interesting and important takeaways.
Sure.
And trust me, these minutes reveal a lot about Austin's priorities and the challenges the city faces.
Yeah, absolutely. For instance, each meeting kicks off with a series of proclamations and awards. Now, we won't bore you with every detail, but it's fascinating to see the sheer range of topics covered.
Yeah, it's like a snapshot of what's on the city's mind. We've got everything from proclamations recognizing Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and the Constitution to shining a light on American Heart Month and even Emergency Preparedness Week, all crammed into just 2 meetings.
It highlights the sheer breadth of issues the city government is concerned with, right? And sprinkled among those proclamations are these really interesting Distinguished Service Awards acknowledging individuals who've made significant contributions to the city. We're talking folks like Diane McCrary-Lagrone and Commander Michael Caine. These folks are the unsung heroes of Austin.
It's a good reminder that local government isn't just about abstract policies and regulations. It's about real people making a difference in their communities. But let's be honest, those proclamations and awards are just the opening act. The real drama unfolds when we get to the consent agenda.
Ah, the consent agenda, the express lane of city council decision-making.
Okay, break it down for us. What is this mystical consent agenda, and why should we even care?
Imagine you're at the grocery store with a cart full of staples, milk, bread, eggs. You don't need a lengthy debate about each item, right? The consent agenda works similarly. It bundles a bunch of routine, non-controversial items into one big vote, streamlining the meeting and allowing the council to focus on more pressing matters.
So it's like the bulk purchase of local governance. Efficient, but maybe not the most exciting part of the shopping trip. What kind of things ended up on Austin's consent agenda in these February meetings?
We're talking contracts for things like tree growth regulators for the electric utility batteries, for, you guessed it, the electric utility.
Oh, wow.
And even emergency management consulting services. This is a real mixed bag.
It's interesting, though, because even in this express lane, you sometimes see little bumps in the road.
Sure.
For example, the minutes mention that the Electric Utility Commission actually recommended against approving the contract for tree growth regulator services. Any insight into why that might be?
That's where things get interesting. The minutes reveal that the commission voted 5-1 against the contract, citing concerns about cost effectiveness. It seems the council ultimately decided to move forward, despite those concerns, highlighting the sometimes complex dynamics between different city bodies.
It's like a little peek behind the curtain of local government,
Right.
revealing those behind-the-scenes power struggles. Now tell me more about this affordable housing focus I'm seeing in these minutes. It seems like every other item on the consent agenda has something to do with low-income housing tax credits.
You're definitely picking up on a trend. These resolutions supporting applications for tax credits for projects like Bailey at Berkman, Bailey at Stastny, Eberhart Place Senior Housing,
Okay.
they all point to a concerted effort to address Austin's affordable housing crisis. It's clearly a top priority for the city.
Which makes sense given the rate at which Austin is growing and the impact that's having on housing costs. But it makes you wonder, what happens when things aren't so cut and dry?
Mm-hmm.
What about the items that don't sail through the consent agenda? That's where the real action happens.
Yeah.
Those items that get pulled from the consent agenda for further debate, they're like the flashing neon sign saying controversy ahead.
Precisely. These pulled items often represent the thornier, more nuanced issues facing the city.
Okay.
And the February meetings had some interesting ones. Take, for instance, item 23 from the February 1st meeting,
Okay.
a proposal dealing with pay and benefits for Austin Police Department officers.
Talk about a hot topic. Police funding and reform are constantly in the headlines.
Right.
It's no surprise this one sparked some debate.
Absolutely. And the minutes show that Councilmember Fuentes took a proactive stance. Okay.
Proposing an amendment requiring that any funding increase for police pay come from the existing police budget rather than necessitating cuts to other departments.
So a balancing act of sorts, trying to address officer compensation while also being mindful of the city's overall budget and priorities.
That's it.
Did that amendment pass muster?
It did. The minutes indicate that Fuentes' amendment was successfully added to the proposal, signaling a desire within the council to find common ground on this often divisive issue. It shows how these minutes can reveal those subtle negotiations and compromises that happen within local government.
It's like a glimpse into the art of the deal.
Sure.
City Council edition. Okay, so we've got police pay. What other hot-button issues were pulled from the consent agenda fire? Well, fast forward to the February 15th meeting, and we encounter another intriguing pulled item, item 14. This one seemed pretty straightforward at first glance. A resolution about establishing transparent and ethical citywide AI guidelines. You'd think that wouldn't ruffle too many feathers, right?
Yeah, who doesn't want ethical AI? It sounds like a no-brainer. So what was the holdup? Why pull this one for further discussion?
That's the million-dollar question. The minutes, unfortunately, don't provide all the juicy details.
Right.
But they do indicate some level of concern or disagreement among council members.
Come on, spill the tea. What were they worried about? Rogue robots taking over City Hall.
Huh. Probably not quite that dramatic. But remember, AI is still relatively new territory, especially when it comes to government regulation. There might have been concerns about how these ethical guidelines would be enforced, the potential impact on innovation within the tech sector,
Right.
or even disagreements about which specific AI applications these guidelines should cover.
So less about robots going rogue and more about the very real challenges of regulating a rapidly evolving technology.
Right.
I can see why that one would require more in-depth conversation. It's a good reminder that these seemingly simple resolutions can sometimes open up a Pandora's box of complex issues.
Absolutely. And it speaks to the council's responsibility to carefully consider the implications of these new technologies, especially as they become increasingly integrated into our lives.
Yeah.
But, as much as we love a good policy debate, let's not forget about the unsung heroes of these meetings, the everyday citizens who show up and make their voices heard.
You're talking about the public communications section of the People's Platform. And judging by these minutes, Austinites don't shy away from speaking their minds.
Not in the slightest. The February 1st meeting, for instance, featured a diverse group of speakers,
Okay.
covering a wide range of topics from serious policy concerns to, wait for it, a live music performance by a band called Black-a-Lack.
Hold up. They had a band playing during the city council meeting. That's amazing. Only in Austin, right?
Right. It seems even local government can't resist the allure of live music in this town.
Wow.
But in all seriousness, the inclusion of a musical performance speaks to the unique character of Austin and its commitment to fostering a vibrant arts and culture scene.
It's a good reminder that these meetings aren't just about bureaucratic procedures. They're also a reflection of the city's identity and values.
Sure.
And it sounds like those values include a healthy dose of civic engagement.
Absolutely. The February 15th meeting saw several impassioned speakers advocating for a ceasefire resolution, a powerful reminder that even at the local level, people are grappling with the impact of global events and looking to their leaders for solutions.
It shows that these meetings are about more than just potholes and zoning disputes. They're a microcosm of the bigger issues facing our communities and our world.
Precisely. But speaking of zoning...
Ah, yes. Zoning, the perennial topic that can either make or break a neighborhood association meeting.
Don't I know it? We won't subject you to every tedious detail, but let's zoom in on a couple of cases from these meetings that offer a glimpse into how Austin manages its growth and development.
Okay, hit me with the zoning drama.
Well, the February 1st meeting featured a case involving the rezoning of a property on Pleasant Valley Road.
Okay.
Now, what's interesting here is the amendment that was added specifically prohibiting certain uses for the site. We're talking campgrounds, pawn shops, even outdoor storage facilities, not exactly the typical mix you'd expect in a rapidly developing city.
Interesting. It sounds like they're being very deliberate about the types of businesses allowed in that area. What's the strategy there?
It likely boils down to a desire to control the character and aesthetic of the neighborhood,
Okay.
ensuring that any new development aligns with the existing community's vision. It's a balancing act between encouraging economic growth and preserving the unique identity of a place.
Makes sense. It's about finding that sweet spot where development benefits everyone, not just developers.
Right.
What other zoning sagas caught your eye?
Well, the February 15th meeting had a case that really highlights Austin's ongoing struggle with affordable housing.
Okay.
The council granted approval for multifamily residence zoning for a project called the Ridge Apartments. This type of zoning is crucial for increasing housing density, which in theory should help alleviate some of the upward pressure on rent and home prices.
It's that classic supply and demand issue, right?
Mhm.
More units theoretically translate to more affordable options for renters. But I imagine it's not quite that simple.
You're right, it's a complex issue with no easy solutions. Zoning changes alone won't solve the affordable housing crisis, but it does give us a glimpse into the strategies the city is employing to address it.
It's all connected, isn't it? From AI guidelines to affordable housing, these council meetings really do offer a fascinating window into the inner workings of our city.
They do.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, can we address the elephant in the room? Or should I say the acronym in the room?
Ah, yes, those pesky acronyms, FLUMPDACO. They're enough to make anyone's head spin.
Don't worry, dear listener, we won't subject you to a crash course in city planning jargon.
Huh.
But it's worth noting that these acronyms are more than just bureaucratic gobbledygook. They represent the complex mechanisms that keep a city running.
Exactly. Each acronym represents a different set of rules, regulations, and processes that shape how decisions are made and implemented.
It's like a secret code that unlocks the inner workings of local government. And while deciphering that code can feel a bit like learning a new language, it's ultimately worth the effort.
I couldn't agree more. Because once you start understanding those acronyms and the processes they represent, you gain a whole new level of insight into how decisions are made and how you can make your voice heard.
It's like being handed the keys to the city.
Right.
Right. But for those of us who aren't quite ready to dive headfirst into the world of municipal acronyms, what are the big takeaways from these deep dives into Austin's city council meetings?
Well, I think the most striking takeaway for me is the sheer diversity of issues the council tackles. We often have this narrow view of local government as being solely about things like potholes, trash collection, and maybe the occasional noise complaint.
Which, don't get me wrong, are all important quality of life issues.
Absolutely. But as we've seen from these minutes, the council is also wrestling with far more complex and nuanced challenges. Things like affordable housing police oversight, the ethical implications of AI, even grappling with the local impact of global events.
It's a lot to juggle, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And it really highlights the importance of citizen engagement. Those brave souls who stepped up to the mic during the public communication portion of the meeting, they're the ones ensuring their concerns are heard, that their values represented.
Precisely. And it's a powerful reminder that these meetings aren't just for politicians and bureaucrats. They're an open forum for dialogue and debate, a space where everyday citizens can hold their elected officials accountable.
It's like a direct line to the people in charge, reminding them that they work for U.S.
Exactly. So to anyone listening who's feeling fired up and ready to engage with their local government, where would you suggest they start?
Well, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but I think diving into your own city's council meeting minutes is a great first step.
It may not be the most glamorous activity, but trust me, it's eye-opening.
It's like peeking behind the curtain of local government. You might be surprised by what you find. And who knows, you might even get inspired to channel your inner black-a-lack and start a city council band.
Now there's an idea. But in all seriousness, whether you're analyzing meeting minutes or simply staying informed about local issues, remember that civic engagement starts at the local level.
Well said. Because at the end of the day, local government isn't some abstract concept. It's the very fabric of our communities, shaping the places we call home.
And it's up to all of us to be active participants in that process.
I couldn't have said it better myself. On that note, dear listeners, we encourage you to dive deep into the fascinating world of local government. It might be closer to home than you think, and trust us, it's anything but boring. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those deep dives coming.